Get out! Hands where I can see them! Officer Marcus Reed's gun cleared its holster as he stormed toward the BMW. Car thief thinks she can park at a courthouse? You picked the wrong spot, lady. What happened next would end his career in under 10 minutes. Judge Amelia Washington, 48, didn't flinch. Her hands remained at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. She'd spent 15 years making life-changing decisions from the bench. This parking lot confrontation was about to become another one. Behind Reed, courthouse employees stopped mid-conversation. Phones emerged. Someone started recording. The digital witness was already spreading real-life stories, like these become black stories that define careers overnight. Reed had no idea he was staring at the most powerful person in a 50-mile radius. Have you ever watched someone's entire world collapse because they judged a book by its cover? Reed's boots scraped concrete as he circled her BMW like a predator. His movements were practiced, deliberate, the walk of someone who'd done this dance many times before. Judge Washington had seen that same swagger in her courtroom from cops who thought their badge made them untouchable. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step out now." His voice carried that particular tone she remembered from Officer Mitchell's testimony last month, the same condescending inflection that had made her question everything about his credibility on the witness stand. She kept her hands visible on the steering wheel. "Officer, may I ask what this concerns?" Reed's laugh was sharp, designed to humiliate. "BMW X7, midnight blue, license plate BRW 4891. Ring any bells? Or did you forget about the carjacking you pulled off this afternoon?" The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Judge Washington felt that familiar calm descend the same stillness that came over her during closing arguments, when attorneys thought they could intimidate her with raised voices and aggressive posturing. "There seems to be some confusion, Officer Reed." She read his nameplate deliberately, let him know she was paying attention to details. "Only confusion here is how you thought you'd get away with this." Reed stepped closer to her window. "Stealing a car and parking it at the courthouse? That's either the dumbest thing I've ever seen, or you're mocking us." Across the parking lot, Janet Martinez froze mid-step. She'd worked as a court stenographer for 8 years, had transcribed hundreds of Judge Washington's proceedings. The woman sitting in that BMW had sentenced drug dealers, domestic abusers, and white-collar criminals with the same unshakable composure she was displaying now. Martinez's thumb hovered over her phone screen. Something was very wrong here. Reed keyed his radio with theatrical authority. "Unit 23 Alpha requesting backup for stolen vehicle recovery. Courthouse parking lot." Static then. Units 15 Delta and 8 Charlie responding. ETA 7 minutes. 7 minutes. Judge Washington glanced at the courthouse clock. 5:53 p.m. The building would empty in 6 minutes, taking most witnesses with it. She'd learned to read time like a chess player. Not just what was happening now, but what would happen 3 moves ahead. Her phone buzzed. Marcus Thompson, her bailiff. Martinez started streaming. "Should I intervene?" She typed back without breaking eye contact with Reed. "Let it play out. Document everything." "Put the phone down," Reed snapped. "Hands where I can see them." "I was responding to a court matter, officer. Is that a problem?" Reed's jaw tightened. Judge Washington recognized the micro-expression, the same tell she'd observed in defendants who were about to lie under oath. This officer was operating on assumptions, not evidence, and his pride wouldn't let him back down. "I need to see your registration and insurance." She reached into the glove compartment with deliberate slowness. Along with the required documents, her fingers brushed against the leather portfolio she always kept there, the one containing credentials that would end this confrontation in seconds. But not yet. Reed needed to dig himself deeper first. The registration was crystal clear. Amelia R. Washington, 1247, Magnolia Drive. Purchase date visible. Everything legitimate. Reed examined the papers like he was looking for forgeries. His radio crackled. "Unit 15 Delta, ETA 5 minutes. "These could be fake," he announced loud enough for gathering bystanders to hear. "Identity theft is common with luxury vehicle theft." Tom Bradley, the courthouse security guard, approached hesitantly. 12 years on the job had taught him to recognize every judge's car. "Officer, that's Judge Washington's assigned space. Number 3 is reserved." Step back, Reed's voice exploded across the parking lot. This is police business. Move along or you'll be charged with obstruction. Bradley retreated, but Judge Washington caught his eye in her rearview mirror. He understood. His phone appeared, adding another angle to what was becoming a very public record. Martinez's Instagram live viewer count climbed steadily. Comments scrolled past. This looks bad. She's so calm, though. Why is he so aggressive? In her patrol car 3 blocks away, Sergeant Patricia Mills frowned at her radio. Stolen BMW at the courthouse? Something felt off. Car thieves didn't typically park at government buildings to make a statement. She started driving toward the scene. Judge Washington's briefcase sat in plain view on her passenger seat, expensive Italian leather. Courthouse security badge clipped to the handle. Her judicial parking placard hung from the rearview mirror, clearly marking her status. Reed had noticed neither detail in his rush to assert dominance. She thought about Officer Mitchell again, how he'd perjured himself in her courtroom just 4 weeks ago. She'd caught the inconsistencies in his testimony, the way his story shifted under cross-examination. Reed was displaying the same arrogance, the same assumption that his badge made him infallible. Time 5:56 p.m. 4 minutes until the building locked down. 4 minutes until backup arrived. Reed was about to learn that some mistakes have consequences. Martinez's stream hit 67 viewers. The digital witness was growing, and every second of Reed's performance was being preserved for posterity. In the age of viral videos, careers could end faster than it took to draw a weapon. Judge Washington remained perfectly still, hands visible, expression neutral. She'd spent 15 years learning when to speak and when to let others reveal themselves. This was a moment for patience. Reed's next words would determine whether this ended quietly or became front-page news. The backup units arrived like wolves answering a pack call. Officer Jenny Santos emerged from Unit 15 Delta, her hand already resting on her utility belt. Officer David Kim followed from Unit 8 Charlie, positioning himself to secure the perimeter with military precision. Judge Washington watched their choreography in her side mirrors. 3 officers now, all assuming she was a criminal based on Reed's radio call. She'd seen this escalation pattern in countless cases, how initial assumptions became gospel truth, passed from one officer to the next without question. Santos approached the passenger side, her movements cautious but professional. What's the situation, Marcus? Stolen BMW registered to someone named Amelia Washington. Suspect claims it's her car. Reed's voice carried newfound confidence with backup present. I'm thinking identity theft on top of auto theft. Judge Washington almost smiled. Reed was doubling down instead of investigating. In her courtroom, she'd watched defense attorneys make the same mistake, committing to a narrative before examining the evidence. Kim secured the area behind her vehicle, noting the growing crowd of courthouse employees. His training kicked in as he counted potential witnesses. How many people we got watching? Martinez's Instagram live stream had exploded to 156 viewers. Comments flooded the screen faster than she could read them. Someone had shared the stream to Twitter with the hashtag #CourthouseIncident. The digital amplification was beginning. Ma'am, Santos called through the passenger window, I need you to keep your hands visible and follow Officer Reed's instructions. The judge complied, noting Santos's more measured tone. This officer was thinking, not just reacting. Of course, I'm happy to cooperate with your investigation. Reed felt emboldened by his colleague's presence. See, now she wants to cooperate. Wasn't so friendly when it was just me. Santos examined the registration papers Reed handed her. Everything looked legitimate, correct fonts, proper state seals, valid dates. She'd seen enough fake documents to spot inconsistencies, but these showed none of the usual red flags. Marcus, this registration appears genuine. Vehicle matches the description, license plate matches the paperwork. Could be identity theft, Reed insisted. Professional job. These criminals are getting sophisticated. Judge Washington remembered a case from 2 years ago, People versus Henderson, where Reed had testified about a traffic stop that led to drug charges. His story had changed 3 times under cross-examination, but the prosecutor hadn't pushed hard enough. She'd made a mental note about Reed's credibility issues then. Now those same issues were on full display. Sergeant Mills' patrol car rounded the corner into the courthouse parking lot. She'd been a cop for 19 years, the last 7 as a supervisor. The scene before her triggered immediate concerns. 3 officers surrounding a single vehicle, a growing crowd, and someone live streaming the encounter. "What's our status here?" Mills approached Reed directly. "Sergeant, we've got a stolen vehicle recovery. BMW reported stolen at 2:30 p.m. Suspect claims it's her car." Mills' eyes swept the scene, the reserved parking space clearly marked Heinz A. Washington, the expensive briefcase visible through the car window, the judicial parking placard hanging from the rearview mirror. Details Reed had somehow missed. "Officer Reed, have you verified the stolen vehicle report?" Reed hesitated. "Well, no, ma'am. The call came in about a BMW matching this description." "Show me the report number." The pause stretched too long. Reed fumbled with his radio, but Mills already understood. He'd made assumptions based on incomplete information, and now 3 officers were committed to a potentially disastrous course of action. Judge Washington observed the sergeant's growing discomfort. Mills was seasoned enough to recognize when a situation was spinning out of control. The question was whether she'd have the courage to correct it. Martinez's stream viewer count hit 243 people. A local news reporter named Sarah Olivia had joined the comments. "This is Sarah from Channel 7. Can someone confirm the location?" The digital wildfire was spreading beyond social media. Professional journalists were taking notice. Kim noticed the crowd growing restless. Courthouse employees whispered among themselves, some pointing at the BM, others shaking their heads. His radio crackled with dispatch checking on their status. "Unit 8 Charlie, do you need additional backup?" Kim looked to Mills for guidance. She was studying the scene with the expression of someone calculating political fallout. "Negative dispatch. Situation under control." But Judge Washington could see it wasn't under control at all. Reed had painted himself into a corner, and his fellow officers were being dragged along. In corporate boardrooms, she'd watched CEOs make similar miscalculations, letting pride override the judgment until the damage became irreversible. "Ma'am," Mills addressed her directly, "I apologize for any inconvenience. We're just trying to sort out this vehicle report." The sergeant's tone was notably different from Reed's respectful, professional, carefully neutral. Mills suspected this was about to become a problem. Judge Washington recognized the opening. "Sergeant Mills, I appreciate your professionalism. Perhaps we could resolve this quickly if I showed you additional identification." She reached toward her briefcase. "Stop!" Reed shouted. "Don't reach for anything." Mills shot him a sharp look. "Officer Reed, step back. Ma'am, please move slowly and tell us what you're reaching for." "My identification wallet. It should clear up any confusion about who I am." The leather portfolio felt familiar in her hands, thick, official, weighted with authority. She'd carried it for 15 years, through confirmation hearings, swearing-in ceremonies, and countless official functions. It contained credentials that commanded instant respect from law enforcement. But she paused before opening it. Reed needed to commit fully to his mistake first. In chess, you let your opponent advance their pieces before revealing your strategy. This was judicial chess, played with careers instead of pawns. "Sergeant, with respect, I think we should arrest her for stolen vehicle and identity theft," Reed pressed. "We can sort out the paperwork at the station." Mills's stomach dropped. Reed was suggesting arrest without proper verification, in full view of recording devices at the courthouse where any mistake would be magnified tenfold. Martinez's stream showed 312 viewers now. Someone had cross-posted to Facebook. The hashtag #courthouse incident was trending locally. Judge Washington held the portfolio in her lap, unopened. "Officer Reed, are you certain you want to proceed with an arrest?" Her tone carried a weight that made Santos glance nervously at Kim. There was something in the woman's voice, an authority that didn't match Reed's narrative of car thief and identity fraud. "Ma'am, you're in possession of a stolen vehicle. That's a felony." Reed's confidence was performing for his colleagues now. "Unless you can prove otherwise." The judge almost felt sorry for him, almost. "Very well, I believe I can provide that proof." She opened the portfolio. Time, 5:58 p.m., 2 minutes until the courthouse locked down. Reed's backup had arrived, the crowd had gathered, the cameras were rolling, and his supervisor was watching. Everything was in place for the revelation that would end his career. The leather portfolio opened with a soft whisper, revealing official credentials that caught the late afternoon light. Judge Washington held it toward Reed's body camera with deliberate precision, ensuring every detail would be captured in high definition. Honorable Amelia R. Washington, Superior Court Judge, District 7. The gold seal gleamed. Her photograph matched perfectly. The signature was embossed with official stamps that couldn't be faked. Every element screamed governmental authority. Reed's face went through a series of micro-expressions: confusion, recognition, then pure horror. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound emerged. The confident swagger that had carried him through the confrontation evaporated in an instant. Santos took an involuntary step backward. "Jesus Christ," she whispered, then caught herself. "I mean, Your Honor." Kim's radio nearly slipped from his hand. 19 years of law enforcement had taught him to recognize career-ending moments, and this felt like watching a slow-motion train wreck. Sergeant Mills closed her eyes for a full 3 seconds. When she opened them, she was already calculating damage control. "Your Honor, I sincerely apologize for this entire situation." But Judge Washington wasn't finished. She closed the identification folder and placed it carefully on her dashboard, then reached back into her briefcase. Her movements remained calm, methodical, the same precision she used when delivering verdicts. "Officer Reed, badge number 4472, she said, her voice carrying new weight that made everyone within earshot freeze. "I believe you testified in my courtroom 4 weeks ago. Case number CV 23248847, People versus Martinez." Reed's horror deepened. He did remember a drug possession case where his traffic stop had led to a search and arrest, but there was something in the judge's tone that suggested she remembered more than just his testimony. "You swore under oath that you smelled marijuana, which justified your search of Mr. Martinez's vehicle." Judge Washington's words were precise, each one landing like a gavel strike. "Your body camera footage from that day told a different story." The parking lot had gone completely silent. Even Martinez's Instagram Live comments had slowed as viewers sensed something massive was unfolding. Judge Washington withdrew a manila folder from her briefcase. "I've been reviewing that case file as part of an ongoing judicial misconduct investigation. Your testimony contains several inconsistencies." Reed's mouth moved soundlessly. Perjury was a felony. Perjury by a police officer was career suicide. The timestamp on your body camera showed you were positioned downwind from Mr. Martinez's vehicle. The audio clearly captured traffic noise that would have masked any odors. Yet you testified you smelled marijuana from 15 feet away, against the wind, next to a busy intersection. Mills felt her knees weaken. This wasn't just about a mistaken identity anymore. This was about institutional credibility, about a sitting judge who apparently had evidence of police perjury. Santos and Kim exchanged glances. They'd both worked with Reed for years, had trusted his reports, had backed up his arrests. How many other cases might be compromised? Judge Washington continued with surgical precision. "The defense attorney didn't catch the discrepancy because the body camera footage wasn't properly enhanced. But when cases come up for appeal review, we have better technology available." She opened the manila folder, revealing enhanced audio transcripts and timestamp analyses. "Mr. Martinez spent 8 months in county jail based on testimony that appears to have been fabricated." Reed's career wasn't just ending, it was exploding in real time, captured by multiple cameras, live streamed to hundreds of viewers, with his supervisor and colleagues as witnesses. "Your Honor," Mills tried to salvage something from the wreckage. "If there are concerns about Officer Reed's testimony, we should handle this through proper channels." "Sergeant Mills, I appreciate your position, but when a police officer threatens to arrest a sitting judge for car theft, it raises questions about judgment that go beyond proper channels." Martinez's viewer count had exploded to 567 people. The hashtag #JudgeVsCop was trending statewide now. Local news stations were being tagged in the comments. This wasn't just a courthouse parking lot incident anymore. It was becoming a symbol of systemic problems. Judge Washington's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Thompson. "Building security has the whole thing on CCTV. Multiple angles. Chief Rodriguez is calling an emergency meeting. She typed back, have him contact my chambers tomorrow. This needs formal documentation. Reed finally found his voice. Your Honor, there must be some mistake. I was just responding to a stolen vehicle report. Officer Reed, what stolen vehicle report? Have you verified that such a report exists? The question hung in the air like a blade. Reed realized he had never actually confirmed the stolen vehicle claim. He'd acted on assumptions, stereotypes, and the kind of racial profiling that had been plaguing his department for years. Kim stepped forward carefully. Your Honor, Officer Reed mentioned receiving a call about a stolen BMW matching your vehicle description. Judge Washington nodded approvingly. Officer Kim, that's a reasonable statement. The question is whether Officer Reed verified that report before drawing his weapon and demanding I exit my vehicle. She looked directly at Reed. Did you verify the report, officer? Reed's silence was answer enough. Santos realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. A sitting judge was conducting an impromptu hearing in a courthouse parking lot with body cameras rolling and social media broadcasting every word. Your Honor, Santos said carefully, what would you like us to do now? It was the question everyone was thinking. Reed had made accusations, drawn his weapon, called for backup, and threatened arrest all against a superior court judge. The legal and political ramifications were staggering. Judge Washington considered her options. She could demand Reed's immediate arrest for threatening a judicial officer. She could file formal complaints that would trigger federal civil rights investigations. She could turn this into a public spectacle that would destroy careers and damage community trust in law enforcement, or she could do something unexpected. Officer Santos, I want you to call dispatch and verify whether any stolen vehicle report was filed today for a BMW matching my car's description. Santos keyed her radio. Dispatch, Unit 15 Delta requesting verification of stolen vehicle report for BMW X7, Midnight Blue, license plate BRW 4891. The response came back within 30 seconds. Unit 15 Delta, no stolen vehicle reports matching that description filed today. No reports filed yesterday. Would you like me to expand the search time frame? The confirmation landed like a physical blow. Reed had stopped a sitting judge, drawn his weapon, called for backup, and threatened arrest based on a stolen vehicle report that didn't exist. Martinez's live stream exploded with comments. Legal experts were joining the conversation, explaining the implications of what viewers were witnessing. #police accountability hashtags were multiplying across platforms. Judge Washington looked at each officer in turn. Gentlemen, Sergeant Mills, we have a situation that requires careful handling. Officer Reed has demonstrated a pattern of behavior that calls into question his fitness for duty. She gestured to the growing crowd of courthouse employees. We have multiple witnesses, extensive video documentation, and what appears to be a clear case of racial profiling based on fabricated evidence. Mills knew this was the moment that would define her own career. Support Reed and risk institutional damage, or acknowledge the obvious and begin damage control. Your Honor, the department will conduct a full investigation into this incident. Officer Reed will be suspended pending review. Reed's legs nearly gave out. Suspension meant no pay, no authority, and likely no future in law enforcement. But Judge Washington wasn't finished. She had one more revelation that would complete Reed's destruction. Officer Reed, right, there's something else you should know about the Martinez case you testified in. She pulled out another document from her folder. Mr. Martinez's conviction was overturned last week. The appellate court cited prosecutorial misconduct and unreliable police testimony. The district attorney's office is now reviewing every case you've been involved with for the past 5 years. The words hit Reed like physical blows. Every arrest, every traffic stop, every court appearance was now under scrutiny. Defense attorneys would use this parking lot incident as evidence of his bias in every future case. Time 6:02 p.m. The courthouse had officially closed, but the real business was just beginning. The emergency meeting convened at 8:00 a.m. sharp in Police Chief Amanda Rodriguez's corner office, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city that was already buzzing with news of the previous evening's incident. Martinez's live stream had been viewed 23,000 times overnight. Local news stations led their morning broadcasts with "Judge confronted by officer in courthouse parking lot." Chief Rodriguez sat at the head of her mahogany conference table, flanked by Internal Affairs Captain James Wright and Legal Counsel Patricia Hoffman. Across from them sat Sergeant Mills, looking like she hadn't slept. Officer Reed occupied the chair closest to the door, as if ready to flee. Judge Washington entered at precisely 8 o'clock, carrying the same leather briefcase that had contained yesterday's revelations. She wore a charcoal gray suit that commanded respect without being flashy. Behind her walked Marcus Thompson, her bailiff, and surprisingly, District Attorney Helen Morrison. Chief Rodriguez, thank you for arranging this meeting on short notice. Judge Washington's tone was professional, measured the same voice that had sentenced hundreds of defendants over 15 years. Rodriguez had reviewed the body camera footage 3 times during her sleepless night. Each viewing made the situation worse. Your Honor, the department deeply regrets yesterday's incident. We're committed to a thorough investigation. Judge Washington placed her briefcase on the table and opened it methodically. Chief Rodriguez, this goes beyond a single incident. What we witnessed yesterday represents systemic issues that require immediate attention. She withdrew a thick folder labeled Pattern Analysis. Officer M. Reed. The document was professionally bound, with charts and graphs visible through the transparent cover. Captain Wright leaned forward. Your Honor, we weren't aware you had conducted an independent investigation. Captain Wright, judicial officers have access to arrest records, court transcripts, and case outcomes. When patterns emerge, we have an obligation to examine them. She opened the folder. Officer Reed has made 127 traffic stops in the past 18 months. 43% involve minority drivers, despite patrolling areas with a 12% minority population. The statistics landed like artillery shells. Rodriguez felt her stomach tighten as she calculated the civil rights implications. Judge Washington continued. Of those stops, 37 resulted in vehicle searches. 29 of those searches were conducted on minority drivers. The contraband discovery rate for minority searches was 18%. For non-minority searches, it was 64%. Reed's face had gone ashen. The numbers painted a picture of systematic racial profiling that would destroy any legal defense. Your Honor, Legal Counsel Hoffman interjected, these statistics, while concerning, don't necessarily prove intentional discrimination. Judge Washington smiled thinly. Ms. Hoffman, you're absolutely correct. Statistics alone don't prove intent. That's why I also reviewed Officer Reed's court testimony in 17 cases over the past 2 years. She pulled out a second folder, this one containing transcript excerpts highlighted in yellow. In 12 of those cases, Officer Reed's testimony contained discrepancies when compared to body camera footage or physical evidence. District Attorney Morrison spoke for the first time. Your Honor, my office wasn't aware of these discrepancies. Ms. Morrison, that's because most defense attorneys lack the resources to conduct frame-by-frame analysis of body camera footage, but appellate courts do. Judge Washington's voice carried the weight of legal authority. The Martinez case was just the beginning. My chambers has identified 6 other convictions based on Officer Reed's testimony that appear vulnerable to appeal. The room went silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Rodriguez understood the implications. 6 overturned convictions would trigger a domino effect of appeals, civil lawsuits, and federal oversight. What are you proposing, Your Honor? Rodriguez asked. Judge Washington reached into her briefcase one final time, withdrawing a document marked Settlement Agreement, Confidential Draft. I'm proposing we resolve this matter comprehensively, avoiding protracted litigation that would damage both the court system and law enforcement credibility. She slid copies across the table. Option 1. Officer Reed faces criminal charges for perjury, filing false reports, and civil rights violations. The department faces federal investigation under Section 1983. Media coverage continues indefinitely. Rodriguez skimmed the document, her face growing paler with each paragraph. Option 2. Officer Reed accepts immediate termination, forfeits pension benefits, and agrees to never seek employment in law enforcement. He issues a public apology acknowledging his misconduct. The department implements comprehensive bias training and establishes an independent oversight board. Captain Wright studied the terms. Your Honor, this seems extensive. Captain, yesterday's incident was live-streamed to thousands of people. It's been shared across social media platforms and covered by major news outlets. The damage to police community relations is already substantial. These terms are designed to rebuild trust, not punish unnecessarily. She pulled out her phone and showed them trending hashtags. Judge Vestcop had 47,000 posts. Police accountability was approaching 100,000. The story had reached national attention. But there's a third option, Judge Washington continued, her voice taking on a harder edge. Officer Reed can choose to fight these allegations in court. My office will release all body camera analysis, statistical data, and case review findings to defense attorneys citywide. Every conviction involving Officer Reed will face appeal. The civil rights lawsuits will number in the dozens. She leaned forward slightly. And I will personally testify about yesterday's incident in every proceeding. Reed finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Your Honor, I never meant for any of this to happen. Officer Reed, intent matters in criminal court. In civil rights law, impact matters more than intent. Her response was clinical, precise. Your actions yesterday were the culmination of a pattern that has affected dozens of families, corrupted judicial proceedings, and undermined public trust. District Attorney Morrison had been calculating political damage while reviewing the documents. Your Honor, if we accept option 2, what guarantees do we have that this matter ends here? Judge Washington had anticipated the question. Ms. Morrison, I'm not interested in destroying careers unnecessarily. I'm interested in preventing future incidents. The settlement includes confidentiality provisions that protect all parties while ensuring accountability. She gestured to the statistical analysis. However, these patterns will continue to be monitored. If similar issues arise with other officers, the same scrutiny will apply. Chief Rodriguez understood she was looking at the best possible outcome from a catastrophic situation. Federal oversight would be infinitely worse than internal reform. Officer Reed, Rodriguez addressed him directly, you have 24 hours to decide. I strongly recommend you consult with an attorney and consider the long-term implications of each option. Reed nodded mutely. His 19-year career was effectively over, but accepting option 2 would allow him to avoid criminal prosecution and retain some dignity. Judge Washington closed her briefcase. Chief Rodriguez, there's one additional element. The department's bias training program needs to be developed in consultation with community stakeholders. I'm recommending partnership with the local NAACP chapter, the Urban League, and minority business associations. She stood, signaling the meeting's end. This incident became public because of social media and citizen journalism. The solution needs to be equally transparent. Community trust isn't rebuilt behind closed doors. As she reached the door, Judge Washington paused. Chief Rodriguez, I hope this becomes a model for how law enforcement and the judiciary can work together to address systemic problems. Yesterday's confrontation doesn't have to define our institutions. How we respond to it will. The door closed behind her, leaving the law enforcement officials to contemplate their future in a world where judicial oversight had teeth and citizen accountability was just a live stream away. Rodriguez looked at Reed, whose career had imploded in less than 18 hours. Marcus, take the settlement. Fighting this will destroy you and damage everyone around you. By noon, Officer Reed had signed the termination agreement. By evening, the department's new bias training initiative was announced on local news. The touching stories of transformation were just beginning. Real-life stories of how institutions could change when confronted with undeniable evidence of their failures. 3 weeks after the parking lot confrontation, Officer Marcus Reed sat in his empty apartment, staring at a termination letter that had already been dissected by every legal blog in the state. The public apology he'd issued through the department's social media channels had been viewed 340,000 times. Comments ranged from supportive to savage, but the overwhelming sentiment was clear. Accountability had finally arrived. His statement, crafted with legal counsel and Judge Washington's input, read, I acted on assumptions rather than evidence, allowing implicit bias to cloud my professional judgment. I sincerely apologize to Judge Washington and commit to using this experience to help other officers recognize and overcome similar prejudices. The words felt hollow when he first read them, but 3 weeks of reflection had changed his perspective. He'd been forced to confront patterns he had never acknowledged, the subtle ways he'd approached minority drivers differently, the assumptions he'd made based on appearance rather than behavior. Downtown, in the same conference room where his fate had been decided, Chief Rodriguez presented the department's new accountability measures to a packed audience of community leaders, city council members, and media representatives. The Washington incident, as it's become known, revealed gaps in our training and oversight that required immediate correction, Rodriguez announced. Today, I'm unveiling the most comprehensive bias prevention program in the state. The reforms were extensive: quarterly de-escalation training, mandatory for all officers, body camera footage review protocols that included statistical analysis, and a community oversight board with actual investigative authority. The department had allocated $180,000 annually to the program, money that would have been spent on settlements if Judge Washington had chosen litigation over reform. Captain Wright, newly promoted to head the Oversight Division, explained the technical innovations. Every traffic stop is now logged with GPS coordinates, duration, and outcome. Our new software identifies patterns automatically, flagging officers whose stops deviate significantly from departmental averages. The system was already producing results. 2 officers had been flagged for additional training based on traffic stop disparities. Both had accepted remedial instruction rather than face formal investigation. Judge Washington watched the announcement from her chambers, where she was reviewing the first batch of cases affected by Reed's perjury convictions. The Martinez case had indeed triggered a cascade of appeals, but the district attorney's office was handling them proactively, offering plea modifications rather than fighting obviously compromised convictions. Her phone buzzed with a text from DA Morrison. 6 more cases dismissed based on Reed evidence review. Defense bar is actually praising our transparency. The irony wasn't lost on her. What could have been a public relations disaster for law enforcement had become a model for institutional accountability. Other departments across the state were requesting copies of the bias training protocols developed in response to the incident. Marcus Thompson knocked on her chamber door. "Your Honor, Channel 7 wants to interview you about the police reforms. They're calling it the Washington model." She declined, as she had every media request since the parking lot confrontation. The reforms needed to succeed on their merits, not because a judge had become a celebrity for standing up to police misconduct. 3 months later, the changes were measurable. Traffic stop disparities in Reed's former patrol zone had decreased by 31%. Citizen complaints about officer conduct were down 23% department-wide. More importantly, community trust was slowly rebuilding. Black and Hispanic residents reported feeling more confident about police interactions in recent surveys. Reed himself had found unexpected purpose in his disgrace. The NAACP chapter had offered him a position as a community liaison, helping develop training materials based on his experience. His first presentation to rookie officers was raw, honest, and devastatingly effective. "I spent 19 years believing I was colorblind," he told the assembled recruits. "What I was actually doing was refusing to examine my own biases. Judge Washington didn't destroy my career. She revealed the damage I'd been doing all along." The recruits listened with the intensity of people learning to navigate landmines. Reed's presentation had become mandatory viewing for all new hires. Judge Washington's approach had proven that institutional change was possible without institutional destruction. Rather than seeking maximum punishment, she demanded maximum accountability. The difference was transformational. The parking lot where it all began now featured a small plaque near the judicial parking spaces. In recognition of the courage required for institutional accountability and the wisdom necessary for institutional reform. It wasn't specifically about the Washington incident, but courthouse employees understood its meaning. Local law schools were teaching the case as an example of judicial leadership beyond the bench. Judge Washington had demonstrated that judges could be active participants in criminal justice reform rather than passive observers of systemic problems. The live stream that made Reed's downfall viral had evolved too. Martinez now used her social media platform to highlight positive police-community interactions, showing that reform was working. Her documentation of the original incident had become a masterclass in citizen journalism's power to create accountability. Reed's transformation from disgraced officer to reform advocate prove that even careers ended in disgrace could find redemption through genuine accountability and service. 1 year after the confrontation that changed everything, Judge Washington stood before the National Association of Women Judges, delivering the keynote address that would cement her legacy beyond the bench. The ballroom was packed, with over 800 attendees, but her words carried the same quiet authority that had dismantled Officer Reed's career in a courthouse parking lot. Transformation requires courage, but it also requires wisdom to know when punishment serves justice and when accountability serves progress. Her voice carried across the silent auditorium. That parking lot taught me that our power as judges extends far beyond our courtrooms. The Washington model had spread to 43 police departments across 7 states. Federal legislators were drafting bills incorporating her bias detection protocols into national law enforcement standards. What began as a racist traffic stop had evolved into a blueprint for institutional reform. Marcus Reed sat in the audience, invited as a living example of redemption through accountability. His community liaison work had prevented 12 similar incidents through early intervention and training. Former colleagues who'd initially shunned him now sought his expertise in recognizing and correcting implicit bias. The most powerful weapon against systemic racism isn't anger, it's evidence, Judge Washington continued. And the most effective response to evidence isn't destruction, it's reconstruction. Her Harvard Law School scholarship program had awarded full rides to 18 students from underrepresented communities. 3 were already clerking for federal judges. The touching stories of their transformations prove that individual acts of courage could create generational change. Janet Martinez had parlayed her viral live stream into a documentary filmmaking career, focusing on life stories that revealed systemic problems while highlighting solutions. Her latest film, 10 Minutes That Changed Everything, premiered at Sundance to standing ovations and distribution deals. Chief Rodriguez had been promoted to state police commissioner, largely based on the success of the Washington model reforms. Crime rates in minority communities had decreased 18% as trust in law enforcement improved. Black stories of positive police interactions were finally balancing the narrative of fear and mistrust. Reed's teenage daughter, initially mortified by her father's public disgrace, now spoke proudly of his transformation. "My dad made terrible mistakes, but he's spent every day since then trying to fix them," she told her college admissions essay readers. "That's the kind of person I want to be." The real-life stories emerging from that courthouse parking lot had proven that accountability and redemption could coexist. Individual transformation could drive institutional change. And sometimes the most powerful response to injustice was strategic patience combined with undeniable evidence. Judge Washington concluded her speech with the same question that had started everything. Have you ever been judged by your appearance before anyone knew who you really were? Now ask yourself, have you ever been the one doing the judging? The parking lot incident had become more than a viral moment or a case study. It had become proof that broken systems could be repaired by individuals willing to use their power responsibly, their platforms purposefully, and their influence to create lasting change rather than temporary satisfaction. Now it's your turn to share. Have you witnessed moments where someone's calm response to injustice created real change? What would you have done in Judge Washington's position? Share your experiences with bias or discrimination in the comments below. These Black stories matter because they show us that transformation is possible. Real-life stories like Judge Washington's prove that individual courage can reshape entire institutions. Touching stories of redemption remind us that accountability and grace can coexist. Like this video if you believe in systemic change through individual courage. Subscribe for more life stories that showcase strength through wisdom. Share this with someone who needs to hear this message of empowerment. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Your courage to stand up for justice matters.